In the book of Esther, chapter 1, verse 6, there's an enlarged Chet. The numeric value is 8, and it carries two messages. One is the letter itself, and the other is the numeric value of the letter. When somebody in captivity is allowed to write home, he will often use some sort of code that's understood by the person to whom he's writing. Spies use elaborate codes. Sometimes important information is hidden in plain view. The untrained eye will just pass over it without seeing it. When the Israelites were in Persian captivity, the idolatrous atmosphere brought great pain to the more sensitive and faithful amongst them. One of the most painful situations was the long and elaborate feast of King Ahasuerus, related in the book of Esther. Some things occurred that were not only too painful for the Jews to mention outwardly, but it could have been dangerous to do so. And so a message was concealed within the text, a message that communicated the brazen insolence of Ahasuerus, his total lack of respect for the God of Israel. It would have filled the Jews with horror. The banqueting room was filled with the treasures that the Persians had looted from the surrounding nations, and included among these was furniture, fabrics, holy vessels, and priestly garments from the temple in Jerusalem. Here's the Hebrew text for Esther, chapter 1, and we're looking at verse 6, especially the enlarged letter Chet there, larger than all the other letters on the page, and it carries a special message. It appears in the passage which describes the gross and inappropriate decorations within the banqueting hall. The Gemara says that in addition to using the stolen vessels from the Jewish temple, Ahasuerus garbed himself in priestly garments, and the enlarged Chet carries extra information. The first piece of information is connected with the numeric value of the Chet, which is 8. This is telling the reader that the proud and arrogant Ahasuerus not only donned the 4 garments of the common priests of the temple in Jerusalem, but he had the temerity to don those of the high priest, which numbered 8 in all. 8, the number of transcendence, of that which is beyond the bounds of the natural. And here, an idol worshipper uses those sacred garments to wipe away the wine dregs from his beard. The situation must have been near intolerable to the faithful who were present, men like Mordecai. The second piece of information involves a word which begins with the Chet, Chet, and Chet means sin. The situation is very serious, but the grace and long suffering of God is seen in this message. You see, there are 3 different words for sin. There's pesha, a very serious sin. It's when a person recognizes his master and yet rebels against him to cause anger. He wants to cause him anger. Very serious sin. Avon is when a person just does what he wants to do anyway, not to annoy God, not to anger God, but just to enjoy forbidden things. And the third sin is Chet, and Chet is when somebody misses the mark. We might think of a target, and someone fires an arrow and it misses the mark. The person who commits Chet, you see, is not somebody who is willfully mocking God, as in Pesha, nor somebody who just doing something because it feels good. He's somebody who has been aiming higher but missed the mark. Chet, in other words, is the lesser of the 3 evils. It's as though God was giving Ahasuerus the benefit of the doubt. And isn't that typical of the God of grace? Now, whilst we're on this subject of the tendency of God and the biblical text to be kind to unbelievers, there's a passage in Exodus chapter 15 which is interesting. Moses spoke about the fear that fell upon the Egyptians as the sea closed in upon them. And the word that Moses chose is amatar, fear. Amatar fell upon them. Fear fell upon them. But the Zohar, the mystical book of the Jews, the Zohar divides this word into two. And it does this with it. Just look at this. Amat, and then the hay stands on its own. And this reads, Amat, Yah. The fear of the Lord fell upon them. Not just fear, but the fear of the Lord. This implies that the Egyptians recognized the hand of God in the entire incident before they died. I think it's a beautiful idea. I repeat this story because of its beauty and intrinsic truth. Whatever the case with the ancient Egyptians, we may be assured that many people are snatched from eternal damnation at the 11th hour, and that God has always been swift to save. If the very people who had been so wickedly treated by the Egyptians, the Jews, have sought nevertheless to find a way that maybe they were saved at the last moment, how much more will God himself devoutly and compassionately seek men's salvation? After all, Judaism only has this way of looking at things because of its origin in and contact with God. Chet also stands for Chaim, life.